Hello, class. Today we're here to talk about Chapter 2, Project Selection and Prioritization. So, let's go ahead and discuss the strategic planning process. There are about 4 key areas of strategic planning process that we're going to discuss during this particular chapter. We're going to focus in on strategic analysis. We're going to focus in on guiding principles, the vision and the mission statement. We're going to talk about strategic objectives and flowdown objectives. Strategic analysis. What is it? Here's some examples of strategic analysis. We have the SWOT analysis, which goes over strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. There's also the elements within the project team's control. There's elements over which the project team has little to no control. What this SMART analysis does is helps us determine the best strategic analysis for a project that we're going to take on in the future. So here's just the analysis, SWOT analysis for the example that they give in the book is the built green home on Cicadia, right? What the team does is we write down and we have what we call a brainstorming session. We go over the strengths. We also list the weaknesses. We list the opportunities and we list the threats. And we basically do analysis once we kind of come together with a list of all the strengths and the weaknesses and the opportunities and threats. And then we go from there whether we want to, is this something that requires a project to problem solve? So we have some of the guiding principles, right? The vision is one sentence that describes the organization in the future. So when we're talking about a vision with any organization, any project, we have to talk about what the vision is. This approach emphasizes the social, environmental, and the economic health of all company stakeholders rather than a narrow emphasis only on the economic return of shareholders. So when we're talking about the vision, it requires extra effort to be achieved. You got multi-year goals that may require a need for a new vision. The actual mission statement itself is a mechanism for achieving the vision. So, we have triple bottom line, which deals with social, environmental, economic factors. And we have the organization's core purpose, core values and beliefs, the culture, primary business, and primary customers. All this should be accompanied in your mission statement. So next, let's take a look at a mission statement a little bit further. We typically in mission statement, we need to define what the purpose is, why organization exists. We have to define those core values, how decisions are made, and then we have the beliefs, how people are treated and what the leaders stand for. Other considerations when developing a mission statement. We have to define the culture, how a member should act. Primary business area, what business the organization engages in. Then we have the primary customers, which are groups of people that need to be satisfied. Here's just an example right here of a mission statement and a vision from a Cincinnati Children's Hospital. You see that the vision is that the center will be the leader in improving children's health, right? Then we have an example of the mission statement, in which you have the Cincinnati Children's will improve child health care and transform delivery of care through fully integrated, globally recognized research, education, and innovation. And it kind of puts those bullet points that we talked about earlier regarding outcomes and experiences and values. So this would be a pretty decent example of a vision and a mission statement. We want to keep the vision very short and a mission statement. We want to elaborate down that a little bit more, but we want it to be concise as well. So let's talk about strategic objectives. Basically, what they are is just a means of achieving a vision and a mission. The objective setting occurs annually. You have to describe the short-term and long-term results. We have to describe measures of achievements. So we have effective objectives, right? So specific, measurable, achievable, results-based, time-specific. That's the acronym for SMART. We have what's called Flowdown Objectives, where we want to enforce strategic objectives that are implemented through ongoing operations, and projects are the primary method of implementing objectives as well. Now let's go ahead and switch to what we call portfolio management. Portfolio management deals with what we call portfolios. It deals with segments and projects called programs. And then we have the actual projects and the sub-projects. Then next we have access organizations' ability to perform projects. So we're going to cover these real quick in a little bit more detail. So portfolios, what are they? They're composed of projects, programs, and sub-portfolios and ongoing operations. Basically, they seek a balance between large and small projects. You got a high risk, high reward, low risk projects, and it's a quick completion of a substantial time of projects. So let's look at it as an investment portfolio, right? You have typically, if you have a 401k, you're investing in multiple types of companies and organizations and funds, right? You have what's called a portfolio. The same thing here, except we're dealing with projects instead of actual investments itself. Let's talk about programs. What are they? Programs basically include a group of related projects, sub-programs, and activities. Last as long as the organization lasts. The projects within our program are of a limited duration, and they're managed at a level above the project manager. So basically what programs are, is what I would explain, how I would best explain a program is like, program would be like about 6, 7, 8 different projects that are umbrellaed up to one particular program. So your program, it can be anywhere between 4 and 8 projects. Typically, based off of my experience, I've seen as much as like 17 or 18 projects rolled up into an overall program. So basically, the project manager should attempt to understand how both portfolio and program decisions impact their projects, and then spend most of their efforts focusing on their project. Let's talk about the project portfolio. Basically, it's a collection of projects grouped to be collectively managed, like I stated earlier. So in portfolio management, you tend to want to identify, you want to prioritize, you want to resource, you want to select and govern. That's what we do within a project portfolio. Projects and sub-projects. Basically, it's a large project may be composed of multiple sub-projects. The project manager coordinates sub-projects and makes decisions that are best for the overall project. A sub-project comes from dividing a project into more manageable pieces. So, a lot of projects have what we call sub-projects. It's kind of like putting together a table, right? You got this huge table, but the project is to build a table, but sometimes we have to put together the legs. Sometimes we have to attach the glass to the table, and sometimes we have to put together the chairs. But overall, these are like small different pieces that come together for the overall project or building the actual table itself. Reasons for project failure. This is a good one right here. Let's discuss some of these bullet points. Not enough resources. Got to have the people to do the project. Not enough time. Unrealistic expectations to get projects done. That's not good. So, a good example of that would be, okay, I want to finish this project management class in about a week. That's not enough time. There are boot camps that are allowed to do that, but the way this class is designed, there's no way we can cover all the content in 1 week. So therefore, it's not enough time. Unclear expectations. So, just in classroom terms, how am I grading Professor Q? If I'm ambiguous about, the grading process, then it's unclear of how to meet expectations. Changing to the project. So an example of this would be like us talking about project management work, then we veer off to database management and Microsoft applications and make it a focus on that. We don't want to change the overall project. And finally, disagreement about expectations. You can't have conflict within a project on what the expectations are. When you start having conflicts, those are reasons for a project to stop in its tracks and ultimately fail. Projects must be aligned with the goals of the with the parent organization. So, access organizations' ability to perform projects. These are four areas that you want to focus in on, and this is on the PMBOK as well. Teamwork. Do we have a teamwork attitude, free and open communication, creativity, and empowered decision making? From a PM process perspective, do we have a clearly defined project management process? Do we have our associates? Do our associates have the right attitudes, skills, competencies to use a project management process? And finally, leaders, very important right here. Are our leaders at each level willing to take their appropriate personal risk? Personal risk meaning, are they willing to do what it takes to make sure that the projects succeed? Accessing organizations' ability to perform projects. Again, we have what's called the foundation. The senior leadership establishes a strong leadership foundation. Leadership. Do individuals and teams exhibit leadership at their respective levels? Then finally, we have the external environment. Do we monitor and understand our external environment well? So, identifying potential projects. There's about three things that we can focus in on. All parties should participate. You have to identify twice the projects, and you have to have a deep, brief description of the project, right? There may be legal requirements, technical advance, customer requests. Maybe there's a social need or environmental consideration, a strategic opportunity, or market demand. These are key areas that we focus in on in order to identify potential projects to be worked. Identifying potential projects. The next step is just to summarize the work, put a statement of work, what will be done, and what will be produced. And finally, we do a why the project is important, which is the business case. You got to understand the why. Why is the project worth the organization's investment? This is very important when identifying a project and moving forward with a project. Methods for selecting projects. What value does potential projects bring to the organization? Are the demands in performing each project understood? Are the resources needed to perform the project available? These are questions that we need to know before selecting a project. If we don't have answers to these questions, it's probably not good for selecting. Methods for selecting projects. Also, is there enthusiastic support both from internal customers and from one or more internal champions? Which project will best help the organization achieve its goals? These are also questions that need to be considered. Methods for selecting projects. They include financial and scoring models. Projects are investments. There's three different types of approach. There's a financial analysis as a primary means of selection. There's financial models as a screening devices. Then there's financial justification as one factor in a multi-factor scoring model. Listen, let me tell you guys something. When selecting a project, you always have to consider those costs. Probably, if anything, based off of my experience, cost is probably the number one selecting feature or approach for whether a project gets selected or not, because projects cost money, and we got to have monies in the coffers before we undertake any endeavor, and that's life in general. Using a cost-benefit analysis model to select projects. So these are some areas that can be used for most PMOs to select particular projects. One is net present value, NPV. It's most widely accepted model. It discounts the expected future value. You have the benefit cost ratio, divide the cash flow from the initial cash outlay. This is another one. We have what's called the internal rate of return, IRR. It's a percentage of return expected in investment, a ratio above the current cost of capital. Then we have the payback period, PP, which is time required to pay back the initial project investment. All these little areas, all these formulas are used to be able to determine the cost benefit analysis. So using a cost benefit analysis model to select projects. Financial models ensure the cost and the return perspective. Financial models do not ensure alignment with strategic goals. Depending on what these models are and what some of the outcomes are, they may not align with strategic goals. However, it's a good model to follow. You have to know and have a better understanding of what the financial benefits and liabilities are when dealing with project selection. We have what's called financial models for project selection. So here, this is just a good grid of NPV, BCR, IRR, and PP, right? It gives you the calculation, the neutral result, if used to screen projects or select the projects outright, and if used to compare projects. So it kind of gives you a grid of what some of the outcomes are when using some of these models. Using a scoring model to select projects. Scoring models often are used when multiple important criteria exist, like identifying potential criteria, determining the mandatory criteria, doing a weight criteria, evaluating projects, and sensitivity analysis. These are the scoring models that areas that typically go into project selection. So examples of project selection criteria. I'm not going to go into all of these, but you can go ahead and take a look and pause this. I'll just go ahead and just name off the first three. How well does a project fit with at least one organization objective? How many customers are there for the expected results? How competitively can the company price the project results, et cetera, et cetera. These are questions that need to be asked when defining project selection criteria. Sensitivity analysis. What would happen if factors are to change? Some criteria may be deemed more important than others. Can you add missing criteria or new alternatives? Prioritizing projects. Which projects are assigned resources and scheduled to begin first? Scoring models provide input. Other considerations that we have to know about: the urgency of each project, the cost of delaying the expected benefits, practical details, and timing. These are things that have to be considered when prioritizing projects. So once a project is prioritized, we'll go ahead and discuss securing that project. In order to secure the project, we need the client perspective, the selection and prioritizing of processes. We need to make versus buy decision, the contractor perspective, right? We have to identify potential project opportunities. We have to determine which opportunities to pursue. We have to prepare and submit project proposals and ultimately negotiate to secure the project itself. Identifying potential project opportunities. A lot of organizations perform portfolio alignment exercises where they attend trade shows and professional conferences. They practice customer relationship management by establishing a neutral personal context and linking information system. These are just ways that organizations identify potential project opportunities. So once we identify those opportunities, we have to determine which opportunities to pursue. So we do target projects to pursue. Some people use that SWOT analysis. They determine if projects will help achieve contractor objectives. We have to consider the cost because costs are the main driver for a lot of project selections. We have to consider the probability of securing the project and then consider the capability to perform the work itself. These are all factors that that will determine which projects to actually pursue. Then after that, once we have actually determined which potential project we're going to pursue, we have to prepare and submit the project proposal. We have to understand the source and selection criteria, and then also we have to consider technical, managerial, and financial factors in the contract selection. So right here is just a grid of the typical source selection criteria. We have the technical experience, we have the needs, understanding, and the technical approach and risk mitigation. And we look at it from three perspectives, the management perspective, the financial perspective, and the operational perspective. This grid is pretty nice because it gives the actual outcomes for each functional area when determining what the criteria is for project selection. Finally, we have what's called the negotiate to secure the project. The PM must find a solution to secure the project work with enough profit potential. We have to negotiate the monies to be paid for a project, and we have to deal with contractual terms. You have to deal with schedule, quality standards, personnel, and reporting mechanisms. And this is it for project chapter 2. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Thank you.